Greetings, friends, and welcome to Everyday Samurai, in service to your liberty and the security of a free state. Now watch closely because the action is about to unfold quickly. It turns out that this is a demonstration for a law enforcement Special Rapid Intervention Brigade out of Congo in Central Africa. All of the people involved are police officers, and some of the onlookers are there to film the event. Despite this being a scripted incident and all the players are in on the act, we can evaluate the techniques involved because it is a realistic tactical problem that armed professionals do face. I know this and take it seriously because when I first got into law enforcement, I worked with a guy who had just returned to duty after taking a machete to the left cheek from an overhead strike. Examining now in more detail, pay attention to how the attack begins by rearing back wide before coming overhead at an angle, what in Japanese martial systems is called a Yokomen Uchi, or side of the head strike. The officer's posture is upright as he engages directly and without hesitation with his left hand to receive the attack and blend with the movement, thereby gaining control by flowing with and amplifying the attacking energy. This is in contrast with the other officer that actually flinches and backs away at the sight of the impending attack. You can notice the difference in confidence, skill level, and impulses by their reaction to this threat. This is not to demean the other guy, he may have had a different plan. But in this incident, the contact officer's training takes over now that the right foot has to step in between the attacker's legs so that he can load the weight onto the hips and make the throw. Perhaps we can take a few points off for being a little too high, not sufficiently getting his hips under the attacker's hips. But there's no arguing with success when the throw is executed with very little drag. The officer maintains two hands on the offending arm. And good thing too, because the attacker continues to struggle and squirm a bit as the second officer finally moves in to assist as the contact officer rolls the attacker over with mechanical leverage to finally effect the arrest. We'll look now at the mechanics of the attack and arrest in slow motion, where you can see the situation unfold fluidly with the contact officer who willingly engages the threat and receives the attack without resistance, empowered by a relaxed yet upright posture. Human beings fight with tools, and samurai combat is characterized by edged weapons engagements. Most people training Koshi Nage or hip throws from a Yokomen Uchi side of the head strike dispense with weapons for the sake of safety and convenience, and that's okay, but in so doing we must be mindful of the tendency to lose sight of the realities of interpersonal conflict and the martial nature of our art. We'll look now at a few different ways of training for Yokomen Uchi Koshi Nage. Not to criticize or ridicule, but to hone our own training and increase relevancy of these combative engagement patterns, or kata, for the real world. Here we see a way of receiving the side of the head Yokomen strike by stepping back to create space while blocking with one hand. Moving in with an atemi to strike the attacker's face is a good way to disrupt their balance and intention, but would that left hand actually stop a committed attack, particularly with a machete inbound like what we saw in the original scenario? Using an Ikkyo-style armbar to immobilize the attacker and move in with the hips under can be effective, but you have to hold on to the offending arm with both hands to maintain control. Otherwise, round 2 of the fight is imminent. What are the hands controlling in this case, and is the attacker off balance? This gap affords the attacker time and position to confound the situation. Moving in with an atemi strike with the elbow is a nice feature of this technique, yet again, positive control of the offending arm after the throw is essential when faced with the realities of combat. We'll look now at a direct entry approach where, ideally, the defender stops the swing before it reaches its apex, and thereby before the power becomes acute. A hips under throw can be effective, and leverage on the elbow will likely cause the attacker to drop the weapon. However, in order to be effective, the defender needs unbendable arms, literally thinking of our arms as swords extending from the torso and cutting through the attacker's intent and being. By bending the elbow as one moves in, you lose the ability to take the attacker's balance, and thereby diminishing the likelihood of successfully applying the hip throw against a committed attack. It is essential that the attack be stopped before it reaches its full potential force, which by itself is another form of blending with the opponent that can be effective when timed correctly. A similar approach involves stopping the attack before the apex and then applying a straight armbar that transitions into a forearm pin, or yonkajo, followed by a reverse finger grab before putting the hips in to make the throw. More phases to an operation adds variables that only increase complexity and add potential failure points into an already contested and chaotic environment. Moving to the outside to strike the offending arm early enough in the attack cycle clearly takes the attacker off balance. However, and I know that this is an explanatory demonstration, in raising the attacker's arm overhead, the attacker now enjoys both feet flat on the ground and a balanced upright posture with no signs of distress. So is this a real hip throw or one based on gripping the finger? Let's remember the tactical problem that needs to be solved and how quickly you need to be able to blend. Even the most authentic traditional Aikido, which opens to the inside as a space cushion to dissipate the attacking energy, applies a Shihonage style wrist and hand grip for positive control during and after the throw. One might question whether a machete could pass through this space, and in my experience, it is possible even with a full-size sword. Yet, using mechanical leverage through the grip is essential to controlling the attacking arm and weapon while simultaneously keeping the attacker off balance. The rule is the spine need not always be vertical, but as the sword of the body, it must be straight. The richness and diversity of jujutsu, yawara, and aikido techniques include direct entry blending as we see in this technical manual from Saito Morihiro Sensei and aikidojournal.com. It advises to receive the attack with the front hand, which draws the attacker off balance, and grip the attacking arm while stepping in with the rear foot. Stepping as described leaves room for what was initially the front foot to rotate around, and then use this hip to make contact just below the attacker's hips in the form of cross. The rotational force of the hips is what completes the throw, and control of the attacking arm is maintained throughout. An alternative version from another Saito Sensei aikidojournal.com technical manual involves coming in with the rear foot and rear hand to blend with the attack and control the offending arm. Again, what was the front foot rotates around, generating centrifugal force that continues to unbalance the attacker and load them onto the hips. It's interesting to read the note stating that getting low, blending properly, and entering deeply could allow for throwing based on momentum alone and without taking the attacker's arm. This may be enough to make the throw and get distance if your plan is to use that time and space cushion to draw a weapon or employ some other tool. In the real world, we have to always be mindful of multiple attackers and the introduction of weapons. Blending effectively could potentially allow for redirecting the angle of attack and put the head under and align the hips for throwing without resistance. However, keeping one's own feet in alignment and being ready for whatever comes next is just as important as maintaining positive control of the weapon arm. Remember, the officer in this case used both hands to control the arm and moved in directly with his hips while maintaining the integrity of his spine. He used the centrifugal force of that hip rotation to throw the attacker and then kept both hands on the offending arm, which was essential to getting the attacker into the prone position for handcuffing. Attackers do not just stop just because they've been thrown once. Readiness and follow-through is part of what the Japanese martial arts call zanshin, or remaining mind. Summarizing our learning points, it is, first of all, essential to maintain upright posture, not only to properly receive and blend with an attack, but also for the mind-body integrity that keeps your full capacities accessible when a situation arises, the most important of which is situational awareness. Avoid crouching, hesitation, or discordant movement so that you see and react to threats deliberately and ideally before they become acute. This comes from and reinforces confidence that only comes through training with a focus on edged weapon-based attacks. Kata pattern repetition is effective at building skill, putting layers of myelin on the neural circuitry to grease the grooves of movement. So training does work wonders when practiced properly, but the kata need to be grounded in, at least, a snapshot of reality. The reality of dealing with edged weapon attacks requires that we maintain unbendable arms that will not collapse when dealing with a committed full-force attack. Think of your arms as swords and your hands as blades cutting through an opponent's vulnerabilities. Used in this way, hands become the final extension of an integrated body-mind system that can maintain positive control of an attacking arm and weapon even after the attacker has fallen, because in reality, the thing to do after a victory is to tighten your helmet straps. This demonstration is valuable for anyone studying human conflict, and students of Japanese martial systems have much to reflect upon and consider for our own training. I hope you've enjoyed this analysis from Everyday Samurai. Please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and be well.